On the morning of June 7th, 1992, three women vanish from a house in Springfield, Missouri. Their cars are still outside. Their purses remain inside. The television is on. There is no forced entry, no signs of struggle, no witnesses. Sherrill Levitt, her daughter Suzie Streeter, and Suzie's friend Stacy McCall disappear overnight from a locked home. More than 30 years later, no one knows who took them or how. Springfield, Missouri, in the early 1990s, is the kind of American city where people still feel safe. Doors are often left unlocked. Neighbors recognize each other by name. Parents allow their teenage daughters a degree of freedom that feels normal, not reckless. With a population of around 140,000, Springfield sits far from major metropolitan centers, maintaining a small-town rhythm despite its size. Crime exists, but violent crime is rare enough that when it happens, it shocks the entire community. This is a place built on familiarity, routine, and the belief that danger comes from elsewhere. June 6, 1992 is a Saturday, and for Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall, it is a day they have been waiting for. Both have just graduated from Kickapoo High School. Suzie is 19 years old, close to her mother, Sherrill Levitt, who raised her largely on her own. Stacy is 18, well-liked, surrounded by friends, and eager for what comes next. Graduation marks an ending, but also a beginning, and the day unfolds with ceremonies, photographs, congratulations, and plans that stretch late into the night. As evening turns to night, Suzie and Stacy move between graduation parties with classmates, celebrating, laughing, and talking about summer in the future. Their plans remain flexible. At first, they intend to spend the night at a friend's house where other graduates are gathering. But as the hours pass and the house becomes crowded, the idea loses its appeal. Sometime after 2 in the morning, they decide instead to go to Suzie's home on East Delmar Street. It feels easier, quieter, safer. They tell friends they'll see them the next day at a pool party and leave in Stacy's car. At home, Sherrill Levitt has followed an ordinary Saturday routine. She is 47 years old, a hairdresser who works from a small salon inside her house. She is friendly, well known in the neighborhood, someone people trust easily. Earlier that evening, around 9:30, she speaks casually with a friend on the phone, mentioning she is refinishing a chair. Nothing in the conversation suggests worry or urgency. Around 11:30, a neighbor sees Sherrill briefly outside. It is the last confirmed sighting of her alive. Suzie and Stacy arrive at the house sometime between 2:15 and 2:30 in the morning. They park in the driveway beside Sherrill's car, unlock the front door, and step inside. The house is quiet. Sherrill is likely asleep. The girls move through familiar rooms, winding down after a long day, changing clothes, maybe turning on the television, settling in for the night. Eventually, they go to sleep, unaware that this ordinary decision, made without fear or hesitation, will become the final known moment of their lives. By morning, the house on East Delmar Street will look exactly as if the women simply stepped out for a moment. But Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall, and Sherrill Levitt will be gone. Sunday morning, June 7th, 1992, begins like any other. Sunshine, quiet streets, the sense that life is continuing as normal. For Janice McCall, however, the morning brings unease. Her daughter Stacy never called the night before to say where she was staying. At first, Janice tries to rationalize it away. The girls were celebrating graduation. They were tired. Maybe Stacy simply fell asleep. But as the hours pass with no contact, concern hardens into alarm. Around 9 in the morning, Janice drives to the house where she believes Stacy spent the night. When she arrives, she learns something unexpected. Stacy and Suzie had left hours earlier, deciding to sleep at Susie's mother's house instead. Janice tries calling the Levitt home. No one answers. She gets back into her car and drives to East Delmar Street. From the outside, the house looks completely normal. Both cars are in the driveway. Nothing appears disturbed. But when Janice reaches the front door, she finds it unlocked. She steps inside and calls out for Stacy, for Suzie, for Sherrill. No one responds. The house is silent. As Janice moves through the rooms, the wrongness becomes impossible to ignore. The television is on, playing to an empty room. Purses are neatly arranged, their contents untouched. Cigarettes rest in ashtrays. Keys, wallets, and identification are all still there. The bedrooms appear slept in, blankets disturbed, but no one is home. 3 women have vanished without taking anything they would normally carry with them. By late morning, friends begin arriving to help search. Janelle Kirby, a close friend of Susie's, comes to the house with her boyfriend, Mike Henson. They notice something odd immediately. A broken globe from the porch light lies shattered on the front porch. The bulb itself is intact. It looks out of place. Without realizing its possible importance, they sweep up the broken glass and throw it away, unknowingly destroying what may have been the first physical sign of something going wrong during the night. Inside, more unsettling details emerge. The telephone has been partially pulled from the wall, the cord damaged in a way that suggests force. The answering machine contains messages that friends later describe as strange, possibly disturbing, though their meaning will remain debated for years. As more people move through the house, checking rooms, touching objects, looking for clues, the scene grows increasingly compromised. What should have been preserved becomes altered with every well-intentioned action. By late morning, there is no denying what this is. Sherrill Levitt, Suzie Streeter, and Stacy McCall did not simply step out. They did not leave together without their cars, purses, or keys. When police are finally contacted, the house on East Delmar Street has already been thoroughly walked through, evidence potentially lost forever. It looks exactly like they left for a moment and never came back. When officers from the Springfield Police Department arrive at the house on East Delmar Street, they initially treat the situation as a standard missing persons case. They walk through the home, take notes, and speak with the family and friends gathered outside. But almost immediately, it becomes clear that this disappearance does not fit any familiar pattern. There are no signs of forced entry. The doors are intact. The windows are locked and unbroken. Whoever entered this house either had a key or was invited inside. Inside, there is no evidence of a violent struggle. Furniture is undisturbed. Lamps stand upright. Nothing is overturned or broken. If something violent occurred here, it left no visible chaos behind. The broken porch light is the one clear irregularity, but the glass has already been swept up and discarded before police arrive. Without it, investigators lose the chance to examine fingerprints, impact patterns, or signs of a struggle. What could have been the first physical clue is now only an absence, a detail that can no longer speak for itself. Inside the house, the family dog remains calm. The animal shows none of the agitation or fear typically seen after prolonged violence or loud disturbance. This suggests that whatever happened occurred quickly and quietly, without sustained chaos or noise. The telephone draws further attention. Its cord has been pulled partially from the wall, though the phone itself is undamaged. Investigators consider whether someone was trying to prevent a call for help or whether the damage happened accidentally during a tense moment. The answering machine contains messages, including one that investigators initially consider unusual. But before its significance can be fully assessed, the message is accidentally erased, eliminating another potential lead. The personal belongings left behind deepen the mystery. All 3 purses remain in the house, containing money, identification, and keys. In 1992, women did not leave home without them. The cigarettes Sherrill smoked are still there as well. The cars sit in the driveway. Nothing suggests planning, preparation, or voluntary departure. By the end of the day, investigators reach a troubling conclusion. If Sherrill Levitt, Suzie Streeter, and Stacy McCall left this house, they did so suddenly, together, and under circumstances that gave them no chance or no reason to resist. Either they trusted whoever was at the door, or they were confronted by someone who made resistance feel impossible. The neighborhood heard nothing. No screams, no gunshots, no disturbance. 3 women were removed from a locked house in the middle of the night without leaving evidence behind. If there was violence, it happened without noise, and if there was control, it was absolute. The Springfield Police Department's initial response reflects the assumptions that governed missing persons cases in 1992. Adults, legally, have the right to leave. They can walk away from their lives without explanation. Because of that, police cannot immediately assume foul play every time an adult goes missing. Many disappearances resolve quickly when people return home or make contact on their own. That assumption proves critical in the Springfield Three case. Rather than treating the house on East Delmar as a potential crime scene requiring immediate preservation and aggressive investigation, officers initially process it as a missing persons situation. They document the house, they interview family and friends, but they do not immediately lock the scene down or deploy the full resources that would be used for a suspected abduction or homicide. That delay matters. Evidence degrades with time, memories fade, opportunities vanish, and in this case, the first hours pass without the urgency the situation actually requires. Within the department, there is disagreement. Some investigators believe immediately that something criminal has occurred. 3 women do not disappear together from a locked house without their belongings, unless coercion is involved. Others argue for caution, for waiting to see if the women resurface, for following protocol rather than jumping to conclusions. Those internal debates consume time, while the most critical window of the investigation quietly closes. The neighborhood canvass is delayed. By the time detectives begin knocking on doors, asking neighbors if they saw or heard anything unusual during the night, many residents have already gone to work or left town. Others have had their memories influenced by news coverage and conversations. The moment when witnesses might have recalled small but crucial details has partially passed. What investigators do find is absence. No one heard screams. No one recalls a struggle. No unfamiliar vehicles stand out. The neighborhood slept through the night. The broken porch light, one of the few visible anomalies, becomes a source of frustration. Without the glass, investigators cannot determine when or how it was broken. The damaged phone line raises similar questions. Was someone trying to call for help, or was it an accident? The erased answering machine messages might have held answers, or might have been meaningless. But with the evidence gone, certainty is impossible. By the end of the first day, police begin to understand that this is not a voluntary disappearance. The women are not coming back. Resources are expanded. Additional detectives are assigned. The FBI is contacted. Media coverage intensifies. The case shifts from missing persons to something far more serious. But the damage is already done. The scene has been compromised. Evidence has been lost. Witnesses have scattered. The investigation begins not from a position of strength, but from behind. By the time law enforcement fully realizes this was not 3 women leaving on their own, but 3 women being taken, the trail has already gone cold. The investigation into the Springfield Three quickly becomes overwhelming. In the weeks following the disappearance, law enforcement receives hundreds of tips. Each one must be evaluated, followed, and either eliminated or pursued. Any could be the break that solves the case. Most lead nowhere. Despite extensive effort, investigators fail to identify a suspect they can build a prosecutable case against. Early attention focuses on men who had contact with the women before they vanished. Sherrill Levitt ran a hair salon from her home, giving clients access to her personal space and routine. Investigators explore whether one of those clients developed an unhealthy fixation or had been watching the house. Interviews are conducted, backgrounds examined, but no client can be directly linked to the disappearance. Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall's social circles are examined next. Friends, classmates, and former romantic interests are questioned about jealousy, resentment, or troubling behavior. Detectives look for signs either young woman felt threatened in the weeks before June 7th. Some individuals raise questions, but none emerge as viable suspects. Investigators also reconstruct the graduation parties the girls attended. Guest lists are compiled, attendees are interviewed. Police ask whether anyone behaved strangely or followed the girls when they left. Most describe an ordinary graduation celebration. Nothing reported clearly connects the parties to what happened later that night. As news spreads, tips flood in from the community. Reports describe suspicious men, unfamiliar vehicles, and strange behavior near East Delmar Street. Each lead is investigated. Nearly all collapse under scrutiny, explained by innocent activity or lack of evidence. One name, however, continues to surface: Robert Craig Cox. Cox has a violent criminal history and is living in the Springfield area in 1992. During interviews, he behaves evasively and appears to know details of the case that were not publicly released. Over the years, Cox makes statements suggesting he knows what happened to the three women. At one point, Cox allegedly tells investigators that the bodies will never be found. The statement is disturbing, but suspicion is not evidence. Despite years of investigation, police cannot place Cox at the scene or tie him to the house through forensic proof. Without bodies or witnesses, prosecutors cannot bring charges. Cox remains a person of interest, but the case against him never advances beyond circumstantial suspicion. Investigators also consider the possibility of a random predator, someone who followed Suzie and Stacy from a party or noticed them arriving home late at night. This theory explains the lack of obvious connections, but it also makes the case harder to solve, as crimes committed by strangers leave few investigative trails. Another theory suggests multiple perpetrators. Removing three women quietly from a house implies coordination. Police examine possibilities involving home invasion, organized crime, or local criminal groups. None can be conclusively tied to the disappearance. Years later, Gerald Carnahan becomes a suspect after being convicted of an unrelated murder. Similarities between cases prompt renewed investigation. His movements in 1992 are examined. No evidence connects him to the Springfield Three. In 2007, an anonymous caller claims the women are buried beneath the Cox South Hospital parking garage, which was under construction at the time. The tip draws national attention. Investigators conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys beneath the structure. The results are inconclusive. Excavation is deemed too risky and costly without stronger evidence. Every promising lead fades. Files grow thicker. Answers remain elusive. With no bodies, no forensic evidence, and a compromised crime scene, the investigation stalls. As years turn into decades, the case continues, but the chances of resolution grow thinner.
The Springfield Three case is a study in how investigations can fail not from lack of effort, but from early mistakes and structural limitations that compound until resolution becomes nearly impossible. This was never a case that police ignored. It was worked for decades. But from the beginning, critical errors created damage that could not be undone. The most consequential mistake occurs before law enforcement even arrives. When friends discover the broken porch light globe and clean up the glass, they unknowingly destroy what may have been the only physical evidence of how the perpetrator entered or exited the house. That glass could have held fingerprints, trace evidence, or brake patterns indicating a struggle. Instead, it is swept away and lost forever. This action is not malicious, it is human. Untrained people, frightened and confused, do what most would do when they see broken glass. But that single moment removes a piece of evidence investigators would later desperately wish they had. The damage deepens when the house is not immediately secured as a crime scene. Friends and family move freely through the home, touching objects, sitting on furniture, handling phones and doors. Each action introduces new contamination while potentially erasing what little evidence the perpetrator left behind. By the time forensic processing begins, investigators are faced with a scene so compromised that meaningful analysis becomes nearly impossible. More potential evidence is lost when answering machine messages are erased. Those recordings might have contained threats, warnings, or clues about who was expected at the house. Instead, they disappear before their importance is understood. Equally damaging is how the case is initially classified. Treated first as a missing persons case rather than a likely crime, crucial early hours are lost. The window when evidence is freshest and memories are clearest closes before the full investigative response begins. The delayed neighborhood canvass reflects this problem. By the time detectives question residents about the night of June 6th and early morning of June 7th, memories have faded. Details blur. Observations turn into uncertainty. Springfield's police department is competent but limited. This is not a large metropolitan force accustomed to handling complex, multi-victim disappearances. The FBI eventually becomes involved, adding expertise, but no amount of outside support can restore evidence that no longer exists. As years pass, the investigation fragments. Detectives retire. New investigators inherit massive files, but not first-hand familiarity. Advances in forensic technology bring moments of hope, but without bodies or preserved evidence, even modern science has little to work with. For the families, the absence of resolution becomes its own form of suffering. Without bodies, there is no finality. Grief never fully settles, because hope, however irrational, never fully dies. The mistakes in this case cannot be corrected. The glass cannot be re-examined. The messages cannot be recovered. The lost hours cannot be relived. This case did not simply go cold. It was damaged at the start and slowly bled out. The Springfield Three case occupies a unique place in American true crime, not because of what is known, but because of what is missing. For more than 3 decades, it has resisted resolution, despite constant attention, analysis, and speculation. Few cases inspire this level of sustained obsession, drawing in amateur investigators, online communities, and generations of people who cannot stop asking how 3 women could vanish without a trace. The mystery feels almost impossible. 3 people disappear from a locked house, no forced entry, no struggle, no screams, no belongings taken, no witnesses. Every explanation creates new problems. If someone entered the house, why is there no evidence of violence? If the women left voluntarily, why take nothing and never contact anyone again? If they were killed, where are the bodies and where is the physical evidence? Each theory collapses under the weight of unanswered questions.
The absence of bodies is the central wound of the case. Legally, it prevents definitive conclusions. Emotionally, it prevents closure. Without remains, there are no death certificates, no funerals, no final moments of mourning. The families exist in permanent limbo, knowing their loved ones are almost certainly dead, but unable to reach the finality that allows grief to settle. This absence also cripples prosecution. Even if investigators could identify a suspect with confidence, what crime could be charged? Murder without bodies requires overwhelming evidence. Kidnapping decades later is nearly impossible to prove. The law is built to resolve cases, but it cannot function properly when the most basic proof of death does not exist. Over the years, many theories have emerged. Some focus on known offenders like Robert Craig Cox, whose statements suggest knowledge but provide no evidence. Others argue for a random predator, someone who seized an opportunity and vanished without leaving a trail. Some suggest multiple perpetrators or organized involvement. Each theory explains part of the puzzle, and none explain it all. The Springfield Three changed Springfield itself. For those who lived there in 1992, it marked the end of a sense of safety. Doors stopped being left unlocked. Parents became more cautious. The belief that ordinary life protects you from extraordinary violence was permanently shaken. Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall had just graduated high school. Their disappearance, hours after celebrating a milestone meant to open the future, adds a cruel irony that continues to haunt the case. They were not reckless. They went home to sleep. That is all. The Springfield Three has become a lesson as much as a mystery. Law enforcement now uses the case to teach the importance of securing scenes, acting quickly, and never assuming that missing adults left by choice. The failures here shaped how future cases are handled. And still, the case remains open. Without bodies, there is no ending. The system cannot close the book, and neither can the families, the investigators, or the public. 3 women walked into a house one night in June 1992 and never walked out again. As long as there are no answers, the case will continue to exist in that unresolved space, unfinished, unanswered, and impossible to forget.
On June 6, 1992, 3 women were living ordinary lives in Springfield, Missouri. Sherrill Levitt was 47, a mother and hairdresser. Suzie Streeter was 19, newly graduated. Stacy McCall was 18, celebrating the beginning of adulthood. 3 women at different stages of life, connected by family and friendship, with no reason to believe they were in danger. Sometime during the night, something happened inside the house on East Delmar Street. Whatever occurred removed all 3 women, without noise, without witnesses, and without leaving behind the kind of evidence that usually follows violence. By morning, they were gone, and more than 30 years later, they have never been seen again. The investigation was damaged from the very beginning. Evidence was destroyed before its importance was understood. The crime scene was contaminated. Critical hours were lost. Witnesses were not questioned while memories were fresh. The case was not ignored, and it was not abandoned, but it was compromised so early that it never fully recovered. The families live with a grief that has no resolution. Without bodies, there are no funerals. Without certainty, there is no closure. Hope lingers even when logic says it should not, leaving them suspended between loss and unanswered questions. Springfield carries this case as a permanent scar. For some, it marks the moment the city stopped feeling safe. For others, it is a reminder that even quiet neighborhoods can hide extraordinary darkness. This was not a perfect crime. Evidence existed. A crime scene existed.
but the opportunity to uncover the truth was lost. 3 women walked into a quiet house on a summer night in 1992. No one saw them leave. No one knows where they went. And until that changes, the Springfield Three remain not just a mystery, but a warning of how easily justice can disappear.
Cases like this one remind us how fragile the line between ordinary life and unimaginable tragedy can be. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing to the Unsolved Echoes. Some stories never truly end. Thank you for watching.